Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's now 2:59 in the afternoon, and we are just about ready to start our session today. And once again, we're very fortunate to have for our speaker today the University Chaplain of the University of Asia and the Pacific, and also the head chaplain of PAREF, network of 17 schools around the country. Please welcome our speaker for today's session, Father Carlos Estrada.
Hey, good afternoon to everyone. Let me share now the screen. I suppose you can see it.
Yep, we can see clearly.
So then the title of this talk this afternoon is Mentoring the Wounded, Accompanying Emotionally Fragile Youth with Christ's Love. Well, just one caveat here. I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. All that I am going to say is fruit of my pastoral work with the youth students, not only from the University of Asia and the Pacific, but also students from other schools, as well as also young adults, young professionals and a few elderly, well, not a few. Actually, I deal with a lot of elderly people, but I say most of the issues that I'm going to be talking about make reference to adolescents, um, junior college or senior high school, rather senior high school level students, um, students all the way until fourth or fifth year, perhaps, and even young professionals. So, one thing I want to say is that um, an observation, because in my previous assignment, I was more involved with administration work. Although before that, I was already teaching for some 17 years and then 12 years more engaged in administrative matters. And then I went back to pastoral work again. I've observed um, the great number of a surprising number of persons who have um, suicidal tendencies. It is something strange. I mean, I was surprised by this because this didn't happen before. Maybe you'd get someone with some problem, perhaps maybe thinking about suicide and all that. But then it seems to have increased, and these are really serious cases, more than just simply passing cases. Okay, so having said that, let me now go to this. I want to present a few slides with some facts that way to situate ourselves. No? In a recent study, in fact, very recent, dated only 2023, this refers to Filipino adolescents. No? So notice, no? 1 in 7, 10 to 19-year-olds experience adverse mental health conditions. Depression and anxiety are the two most common mental health concerns among young people. And then another slide here. The Global School-Based Student Health Survey of 2019 points out that the percentage of adolescents who seriously considered attempting suicide increased from 11.6% in 2015 to 23.1% in 2019. Those who attempted suicide were about 16.8% in 2015, and in 2019 it rose to 24.3%. They also show increasing trends in suicide ideation and suicide attempts among Filipino adolescents in the last decade. Um, More data. So this is the table, the chart. You can take a look at it for a while. So you notice how um, the percentages of those who attempted suicide one or more times in the 12 months before the survey, those who seriously considered attempting suicide during the 12 months before the survey, those who made a plan about how they would attempt suicide, and those who felt lonely most of the time or always. So this is something that is also rather that should be concerned about, because there are many factors that enter into it, some identifiable, many others not. And also, from that same study I quoted from earlier, or rather a different study this time, the WHO declared that common mental disorders are more prevalent among low-income households at about twice the rate compared to those of higher income levels. Um, just recently, a few weeks ago, I was attending some a workshop with the Pasig clergy. We were discussing the protocols or practices that could be used or put into practice for the safeguarding of vulnerable adults. No? So not only sexual the sexual attacks on minors, abuses against minors, but also in general vulnerable adults. Now, at one point in time, in the group that I was in of Pasig clergy, because we were involved in schools, parochial schools, diocesan schools, and they were telling me very surprising things, which I myself had not experienced at all, no, and much less before, not even now. That in one school, in a diocesan school, they discovered a group of students who were actually planning to commit suicide. So they were talking about it, no? As if it were the most ordinary thing. It's like a barkada talking about, hey, where are we going to go to tonight, no? Saan ang gimmick natin mamaya? Parang ganun, no? Their gimmick is suicide. And they were planning to commit suicide one after the other. What is very surprising, I was thinking, oh, this is almost diabolical, no? This cannot be something that arises in or the average person or ordinary people. There is more to it than just that behind this. No? But nonetheless, it's a reality. I think mabuti na agapan nila. They were able to, I don't know how now, but they were able to pinpoint who these students were, and they addressed the matter immediately. But you see, that's the problem now. No? Okay, having seen the situation, let me present now what happens or what can happen in the person and what comprises that. No? Most of the time, we have been trained to think about body and soul. Man is composed of body and soul. But then you find this affirmation or this verse in the first epistle to the Thessalonians, where Saint Paul says, "May your spirit, pneuma, and soul, psyche, and body, soma, be kept sound and blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ." So St. Paul seems to distinguish spirit, soul, and body. Um, Now, the it seems to go against the traditional way of looking at the person as mere body and soul, just simply soma and pneuma, spirit. No? The soul there would sometimes be identified with the pneuma, not so much with the psyche. But then let me go to this. No? To consider the dimensions of the person. I get this observation from one Father Francisco Insa. Sorry for the typo there. He is a priest based in Rome, and he's a psychiatrist also by profession before he became a priest. And he continues practicing psychiatry, but for academic purposes than anything else, because he also is a professor in one of the pontifical universities in Rome. Later on, I'm going to show the slide of his book, which is very interesting, and I would recommend if you can get a copy, at least the digital one. So then, here he says the following: if we are to help others as formators, we need to take into account all three dimensions. Everybody has a spirit called to enjoy God for all eternity. It is nourished by prayer, sacraments, and relationships, especially when charity is their foundation. Everyone has a body that needs sleep, food, and exercise. And everyone has a psyche, subject to mood swings, defined by thinking and feeling in a particular way, conditioned by life experiences, etc. So then he goes into elaborate on these different dimensions of the person. So what we normally or what we traditionally have understood as body and soul would be, in his definition, spirit and body. Okay. Now then the psyche. You see that there is this dimension of the person which is not identified with spirit, or the way we would understand it, soul. Um, and therefore, this is the reason why if a person has problems or issues in the psyche, the part of the dimension of the person, that cannot be solved only by addressing matters of the soul. In yesterday's talk, I was saying that I have met some students who, or one particular student, who, in opening up her what was happening to her, no? The thoughts of suicide, ideas of committing it, and all that. And I advised her, why not talk to your parents about it? And then she said, I did, but then my parents just told me, magdasal ka anak, you pray, my daughter. Prayer will not address that area of the psyche. That's why we have psychiatrists, no? Psychologists, no? Who are the ones who have the expertise to address that particular dimension of the person. No matter how prayerful a person might be, that if there is an issue with the psyche, prayer is not going to solve it all by itself. So then the whole person has to be addressed, and that's what I want to emphasize. Therefore, when it comes to this two persons who are emotionally wounded, um, deep inside, usually the psyche is the one that is affected, not so much the soul. I mean, they can even be very prayerful persons. They can have a lot of piety, a deep piety, in fact. But it can happen that problems or issues arise in the psyche, mood swings, different things, which we are going to see in a while. No? From the pastoral perspective. As I said, I'm not tackling here, although I mentioned terms used normally in psychiatry and psychology. I am not going to be tackling that directly. I will be handling things more from the pastoral perspective, the care that we can exercise over young people, adolescents, young adults who maybe we are in contact with, and maybe who come up with some problems in the psyche. So keep that in mind, that um, prayer alone, spiritual formation alone, will not solve problems of the psyche. That requires something much more. So, having said that, let's consider now the following. What normally do we understand by mental illness? There can be many ways of looking at it, but then I want to just classify the following. So, you have psychosis. These are delusions and hallucinations. The more popular ones are schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Maybe personally, I have met more ladies with bipolar disorder than schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, I hardly have met in my lifetime anyone with schizophrenia, but bipolar disorder, quite a number. So bipolar disorder, you would notice this because these persons usually have extreme mood swings. They can be very up and about, upbeat, ganado, no, very active on one day, and they can be the opposite the next day, no, down in the dumps, no, the not wanting to do anything. There are many different manifestations of this. No, it could be accompanied by some sort of paranoia, always suspicious about other people around them, even their own families, and even their husbands, like in the case of ladies. And I have, in fact, encountered couples, one of the partners who has bipolar disorder. Well, really, it is a cross for the other married partner, and also for the children, for that matter, because really sometimes these extreme mood swings can really affect the way they deal with other people. You have something more common, anxiety and depression. And so these are you find these more common. That is why in that study that I quoted from earlier, they pointed this out. The anxiety and depression are the more common problems. Then you have psychopathic. or personality disorders. These ones, maybe you might not find them that as often as others, no? But they do exist. Maybe one type of personality disorder that might seem to be more common would be narcissism. Um, when a person really tends to idealize himself or herself too much, to extremes, no? That everybody else is wrong. I'm perfect. But I know everything. So don't ever correct me. Don't ever tell me anything that will contradict my ideas or my way of thinking because I know everything. I know more than you. It's not. It's more than being mayabang, no? Because boastfulness, bragging may not necessarily in itself be an indicator of narcissism. It's not something much deeper. It practically said a delusion of sorts, no? That a person may think that he or she is always the greatest in a way of saying it. Okay. Now the more common disorders are this, as I mentioned already, anxiety, sadness and depression, burnout. Um, Normally, maybe let me focus anxiety and sadness and depression. These ones we are familiar with because we meet a good number of people like that, no? But burnout is this more commonly happens among persons who are engaged in service professions. Those who have to deal with a lot of people, and maybe the people are of all sorts, no? That's why you find this burnout in, let's say, I don't know, customer service personnel, perhaps people who are working in HRM, uh, the HR, the departments of companies. You find it also in other service professions, medical care professionals who have to deal with people. Why? Because it can be stressful, no? And eventually that stress tends to get to them. So there are many manifestations of burnout. It could be a loss of energy, not wanting to face up to their own work or the different things that they have to do. Sometimes even it can produce anxiety. It can also produce depression. So these are the more common disorders that we may find in persons who tend to be emotionally wounded. Now, one observation that I heard, because here in the university, or not inside the university, but around, there are dorms, no? Dorms for boys, dorms for girls. And I know one of the ladies who runs a couple of these accredited dorms because some of them are accredited, meaning that the school vouches for the type of service that they give there, although it is run by a third party. Now, this lady was talking to me and telling me because she had been in this business for many years. I don't know how many, but then definitely she has the students of different generations have passed through her dorms. And she was telling me that she runs a dorm for girls, by the way. That's it's a dorm for girls. She was saying that, my father, I find that the girls now are so fragile. Um, from they cannot take pressure. Maybe pagalitan lang sila ng konti or there something is pointed out to them, they become so sensitive, and maybe they even get discouraged when something that maybe a person might have said so innocently, they take it much more seriously than what really they're supposed to. So, yes, we're face to face with a more fragile generation now, where many of these disorders that I mentioned before tend to manifest themselves. For whatever reason, there can be it's very varied. For example, maybe just to emphasize a little bit more all of this, no? I have whenever there are persons who have suicidal tendencies, I mean they really are serious about attempting suicide, and they come and talk to me, and then I ask them, but why? What's the problem? Well, many times I get the answer that similar to because they don't see any future in their lives. And then I ask them, yeah, but how's their family background? What happens in the among their friends, their studies, other issues? Everything seems to be okay. No family problems, no issues with friends. Maybe just minor issues, not really major ones. They financially they are even stable, maybe not necessarily well off, but stable, and they have talents. And so then I wonder, but why don't you see a future? Everything seems to be going for you. And that's the thing. For whatever reason, people nowadays, young people, tend to be fragile in that sense. They expect perhaps something that is so ideal that maybe they think that they cannot deliver. It's like a devaluing oneself, not realizing the worth that one has. So, okay, now let me give some ideas for the prevention of affective pathologies. I got this table from this book that I was referring to, INSA. And I have tried several of these in different moments, and I think it's worth going through in order for us to be able to see. Well, maybe you could think of some of them as ways of addressing those who are emotionally wounded, and that way to hopefully help them recover or at least prevent them from doing something that is too drastic that will destroy their own lives. No? So first of all, a healthy lifestyle. It's good to check what are the lifestyle habits, the mental hygiene. That is to say, um, how do they take care of their mental well-being? Because sometimes you find that among young people, being young, they think that they can do anything and everything because they don't suffer any sickness. No? So therefore, their lifestyles tend to be, I don't know, either too active, maybe. Some people perhaps drink a lot. Others, they engage in so many different concerns, and so therefore naguguluhan yung isip, no? The mental hygiene is affected. So it's worth checking into that to see and advise them regarding their lifestyles, so that that way it doesn't become a toxic lifestyle. Now, here, of course, it's obvious now that if they engage in some form of addiction, drugs, for example, it could even be a porn addiction, mostly in the case of men. Although I've noticed there are more and more women who tend, or more and more girls who tend to be falling into this also, much more even than before. It could be addiction to alcohol. It could be addiction to gambling, online gaming, which prevent them from living a healthy lifestyle. So it's good to check that out, because that could develop into certain pathology eventually. Here, taking care of rest. This is a long list of suggestions. Getting enough sleep. Sometimes people take that for granted, especially students. When they tend to cram, and then maybe they lack sleep for several days in a row because they have to accomplish reports or study for an exam or a quiz or do different things. No? So then it's important that they get enough sleep, having a rest period every day, whatever how long or however long that may be. Then it need not be a very long thing. It need not even be a siesta, because rest could simply mean just learning how to take a break. For example, like the if you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique, that's one possible technique for working or for studying. Maybe just to give a brief summary of that Pomodoro technique. The point is to break down your work or your study into chunks, 25-minute chunks. And then you accomplish a chunk of tasks within 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And then you go back and another 25 minutes and another 5-minute break. No? That way one gets breaks. No? It's not just simply lagari, no? One thing after another. No? Tuloy-tuloy without any pause. No? Resting within the daily routine of family life. No? So in other words, protecting family life with the family. especially for young professionals who tend to work overtime because they want to please their bosses, maybe because they're just new in their jobs, or also maybe because they have ambitions, they want to earn more money or whatever reason. But then um, I often advise yappies if they tend to work like that, don't bring homework. Leave it in the office. So when you get home, just spend the time with your family, or if you live alone, do other things that are more relaxing, which take your mind away from work. Because imagine you're working, uwi ka sa bahay, may dala ka pa rin trabaho, trabaho ka pa rin. So, the mental stress that one undergoes can be eventually draining in the long term. And then longer periods of weekly and monthly rest. So every week. That's why the church um taking off from the Sabbath rest of the Old Testament, and God rested on the seventh day. And why now it is a Sunday? The Sunday rest, really is not only religious, it is also to help us recover, to recreate ourselves. No? If that is the first day of creation, then we recreate ourselves with the Sunday rest. So in other words, to have that really block off your Sundays if as much as possible. Use it as a day of rest, monthly rest. Perhaps every month, one day of the month, want to take a little bit of a break. No? I don't know. Now it's good that you find more and more people who go outdoors. Maybe they go hiking, they go mountain trekking or whatever. No, but all this, no? Even if you try to get at least a monthly break, and then this thing of resting with other people, because friendships do matter. No? One cannot just simply say, "Well, I'll rest by myself." Well, yeah, for sure you could do that, but at the same time, being with other people, family, for example, friends, can help a lot in recovering from the stress of the work week or of the study week. And then here, more ideas to engage in non-productive rest. What's this non-productive rest? Because sometimes one person could be resting, but at the same time, still doing something. No? Um, so para bang you say, oh, maglalaba ako. Habang naglalaba, nagpapahinga na rin ako. That's productive rest. No? So non-productive rest means to say that you don't need to produce anything. You don't need to result in anything. Taking a walk, which might say, pero sayang oras, waste of time. No, it's not a waste of time. Remember that if you don't get this non-productive rest, then things just simply keep on building up inside. Now, passive rest should be avoided because this one is not really very helpful. What's passive rest? Just you lie down on the sofa or in your bed and watch Netflix the whole day, um, or you sleep the whole day. It's passive rest. Why is this not recommended? Because in the end, it is not really resting the way we are as persons. No, if you're a bear hibernating in the winter, fine, but then we're not animals. See, we need that engagement. We need distractions of another type, not necessarily just simply taking things in, but actively engaging with creation, with the outdoors, with other people. Uh, that's important. Relaxation techniques also can help, and there are many of these. No? Deep breathing, you name it. No, calisthenics, some forms of exercise which can be helpful. Protecting our inner peace and joy, no? So which requires reflection, no? A contemplation, prayer. Maybe also you could put it in this particular thing. Although the spiritual aspect will be tackled a little bit later. And then being calm and transmitting serenity. And that's also another thing to it's a way of thinking, a mindset that has to be developed, to remain calm in the midst of what might produce anxiety, and to also transmit that to other people. Because have you ever been with persons who are nervioso or nerviosa? Ninenervyos ka rin, di ba? Means it rubs off, no? Calmness rubs off on other people. Likewise, also being anxious and worried and nervous also rubs off on other people. They make your life toxic too. No? Now, amending cognitive distortions. What are these cognitive distortions? They're different types. But let me just give some examples. I remember in the sometime in the late 70s, there was a cartoon series called Gulliver's Travels. It was patterned after the Gulliver's Travels, no, of classic fame, but cartoon and not and really funny. So they were funny. So then the different characters. One character was called Glum. Glum means sad, no, or down, because this person, every time that there was an adventure, let's say like the characters were being chased by some evil person or by an animal, his reaction was always, "We're doomed. We'll never make it." No? So negative at once. No? That's an example of a cognitive distortion, a negative way of looking at things. No? Or maybe even applying it to oneself. No, I can't do that. I'm not talented. No, or maybe even if I try, for sure I'm not gonna make it. No, or I already experienced that. I do this other thing, for sure. A lot of difficulties will come, and sometimes these cognitive distortions only produce more stress because they're not also in a harmony with reality. So it's important for the guide or the person accompanying these persons to make them rethink things, no? Make them understand, no, you're not worthless. But I've encountered people like that. They consider themselves worthless. But I have to help them point out, well, no, look at what you tell me about your life. What are the things that you're doing? Okay, so you see, there's value there, no? There are good things that you can do. So it's to lift up their spirits and to make them understand that things are not as bleak or as glum as they seem. And then optimizing work time. This thing of getting organized before starting work helps a lot because if you start working tapos magulo ka agad yung magulo yung isip, magulo yung mesa, magulo lahat. But then of course nakaka-stress, di ba? So maybe try to organize your work. Have a schedule which really does help a lot. I sometimes recommend to people, in order not to reach that stage in which we have to cram and do things last minute, and it brings about nervousness and anxiety. Why not try to foresee things over, let's say, a week or even 2 weeks, especially in the case of students, no? And then you already form a certain plan. So para ganun, hindi ka stressed. So you don't need to all just last minute to last minute. Sometimes there's some students who tell me, but father, I work better pag last minute. Oh, really? I mean, I really question that. No? You do work last minute. It's for sure there's pressure there, even though you don't recognize it, and most likely you do things in the last minute, they won't come out well. No? Living in the present, so the here and now. No? Um, there's a phrase from Saint Josemaria which he would say, "Odie nunc," in Latin. No? Today, now. Don't think about the future, which is not there yet. Don't think about the past, which already happened. Learn from the past, and then try to do things now that will help you in the future. So live in the present rather than think, baka if I do this other thing, this other thing, you're already calculating, no? Maybe we're not playing chess here, no? Maybe in chess, yes, you can strategize, you can think 3 moves in advance, but in life, you never know. The important thing is to live in the present, do whatever has to be done now, so that way you lay the groundwork for the future and concentrate on the process rather than on the results. So this is also something. Burnout normally can happen because a person is worried about the results. So what will my boss say? What will my teacher say? What will my classmates say? Um, Rather concentrate on working or studying well now, focus on the task at hand, and then that will in fact produce the results by focusing on the now more than just simply thinking about the results later on. And besides, also, if things don't work out in the end, remember that there's this mindset, the growth mindset, compared to the fixed or static mindset. And this is from Carol Dweck. If you, that's an interesting book, by the way. If you can get hold of it and read it, Carol Dweck, Mindset. She was the one who studied this. She did several experiments on different children and also young adults on the way their minds work. So the fixed mindset is the mindset in which you're worried about the results. If things turn out negatively, it's like a disaster for you. That's like the end of everything. On the other hand, a growth mindset is a mindset that learns from the mistakes that one commits. So then mistakes are an opportunity to learn and to go forward. And so more than just simply getting stuck, no, in whether or not things have been done well. And then here also, doing well even if we are not appreciated. So it's similar to that. Learning to go to bed with a long to-do list. That's interesting. One might think, I have, in order for me to be calm, I have to go to bed with everything done. Impossible. I will never do that. Maybe the only persons who can do it will be the persons who don't have much to do at all, no? But ordinary persons will always have pending things. So then, learn how to live with the pending things because we cannot accomplish everything in just one day. Delegating. This is the problem of perfectionists. They do not want to delegate. The usual reasons are, but see, I give it to this person, then all the more I'll have a hard time because I will have to correct things. No, I mean, learn how to delegate, trust people, and then also, if you are the leader, form them, deal with them. No? And typical, for example, group work. Di ba sa group work, pipiliin ng grupo yung masipag as the leader. Kasi para sa kanila, yung masipag ang gagawa ng lahat. And of course, the poor leader nakasukontented persons who are not delivering. Um, and then say, okay, then please, I won't delegate anymore. No? Parang walang silbi itong mga kagrupo ko. Yeah, but then, you give all the problems to yourself. So try to tackle things, no? And guide them so that they're able to help their fellow group mates perform tasks to see what their capabilities are and then let them do things. Saying no. This also is another cause of burnout. No? Because there are people who really are, they have big hearts. They want to help everybody. No? But then, that's not realistic. You cannot help everybody. You cannot please everybody. So therefore, it doesn't mean that if you say no to certain things that you cannot do, that you're not generous or that you're not kind. No, it's simply that you have to be realistic. You only can reach up to a certain point. You can't do everything by yourself or cater to everybody's needs. So learn how to say no gently. No, I mean not say hindi, no, ayoko. I mean obviously not. I mean, but rather tell them, sorry, I'd really like to help you, but I'm kind of loaded right now, or too many things already on my plate. I cannot handle that. So don't be afraid of saying no. And then break out of the tyranny of other people's expectations. And sadly, this is a defect of people. They also have expectations. So let's break away from that. The important thing is work the way you know you can and what you can do. Now, this one, beginning the day with something pleasant. This is a nice thing to start the day with something pleasant. It could be different things. I know people who, the moment they wake up, they listen to music that they like. Other persons, they listen to podcasts, sometimes even spiritual podcasts. Hallow, for example, if you're familiar with that Catholic app, they have some nice podcasts that can help you reflect about your day. You can, I don't know, eat your favorite dish for breakfast or something, no? But begin your day with something pleasant. And then take advantage of the golden hours. Now, what are these golden hours? These are, the precious moments that happen during the day. They could be, and all of a sudden, free time. Because I don't know, in the case of a student, the teacher canceled class for whatever reason, or like, no, umuulan, classes were dismissed early, at least in the up to the senior high schools. So then, golden hour yan for you, no? All of a sudden, a break that I did not expect would happen. So okay, fine, take advantage of that, no? Do something that will help ease your stress. Remove sources of distraction. Now, this one, I remember one student I had years ago when I was talking to her about how she studies. She told me that what she does when she's home and then time for study comes, she puts her cell phone in another room and then she buckles down to study. That way, she's not tempted to look at the cell phone every time that it starts, it lights up, no? So may message yan, no? So, and then when she's done already, that's when she gets the cell phone back. Um, I know of another student who when he would come back from school, he had a rather demanding course. No, he'd come home, play computer games for about an hour, and then afterwards, once that's finished, an hour, he disciplines himself. He stops and he studies. He graduated eventually with a cum laude, no, with honors. So discipline, there's a certain discipline there. The removing sources of distraction, not allowing oneself to be led by whatever happens, making work more motivating. One can try to find something in work. You know, a desire to learn, for example, can help motivate a person. A desire to try out new things or to be adventurous, to risk. This can help motivate. And then watch out for prolonged periods of overwork and accumulated stress. This one, dapat may alarm bell yan, no? Sometimes accountants, because of the accounting period, that there's some periods in the year that are more stressful, but then learn how to take a break or how to rest afterwards properly, so that one doesn't extend no one's stressful time for a long period. One might consider changing jobs. Maybe not permanently, but maybe temporarily from one thing to another. Now here, the life of piety. This is the final thing, the life of prayer. This is important. Um, to foster this connection with God, because after all, everything that we do is not separate from what God wants of us. In fact, we can say the circumstances we find ourselves in a way that's willed by God also. And the family that we have, the friends that we have gotten to meet, maybe yes, we did something on our part, but the fact is that God had somehow arranged things so that we would enter into those situations. So therefore, we can think of our relationship with God as an important factor. As I said before, a life of prayer or the care of the spiritual life will not solve pathological disorders, but it can help firm up the base on which one can then find the solution to those pathological disorders. So, first of all, a vision of God as Father. This is the spirit of childhood. We are children of God. It can be a very consoling reality because, based on the gospel, one said, "What father among you will give your son will give your son a serpent when he asks for a fish, or a stone when he asks for a loaf of bread? If your fathers on earth know how to give you good things, what more your Father in heaven?" So the trust in God, a loving Father, looking forward to the reward that awaits us in heaven. So of course, maybe we might not get enough reward here on earth, but we always have the hope of eventually getting to heaven. And then to also revise and amend the concept of holiness, because for many people, holiness might tend to be like some sort of ideal that I can never achieve, no? As a perfectionist ideal. No, holiness is sought in the daily tasks that we carry out. For this, I would recommend that apostolic exhortation of Pope Francis, Gaudete et Exultate, be glad and rejoice. You can find it. It's free on the net, on the web. Because he talks there about holiness and he elaborates on what holiness really is. No? So it can give many ideas that can help us realize, well, your ordinary work, what you do, family life, your concerns, all of these are means for holiness. Then valuing unproductive prayer. Because we may tend to think also, my prayer, I'm always distracted. That's a normal human limitation. So don't give up prayer. Maintain that constant dialogue with God. And, scientific studies have shown that people who pray also tend to have less psychological disorders. If that prayer is really prayer, no, not just simply sitting down there and then thinking about the things that we have to do, no, but real conversation with God, meditating on the passion of our Lord. Why the passion? Because that's salvific. We were saved with the passion of Christ. So therefore, to think of one's challenges in life as participating in Jesus' passion, I am contributing to the redemption of souls. And when we are sick, if ever we get sick, hopefully we don't, sanctify that illness. That's the moment God has given us. Now, there's a beautiful idea from Benedict XVI in one of his sermons before he was even Pope. He was mentioning that, when God allows sickness in our lives, it's sort of like He's telling us, wait, you stop for a while, rest. No? And then that's when we begin to find time to pray, to talk about other things. Saint Francis Xavier, for example, no? Um, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, he started reflecting on divine things when he was wounded in a battle because of all his active life, fighting, soldier, and everything. So illness can in fact be very productive from the spiritual perspective. And then to give suffering an apostolic meaning, a difficulties we encounter in life, to really see more than just a difficulty, see the hand of God behind it and how He helps us to identify Himself or ourselves with Jesus. So here, so this is the final slide. This is the book that I was talking about, the formation of activity, a Christian approach. So you notice it's a Christian approach. So that's why the focus is, yes, he talks about, in fact, it's very, very heavy on psychiatry, but a Christian approach to psychiatry, and especially affectivity, meaning say the emotions, which really is what gives rise to those emotional disorders. No? Um, it's available on Amazon. If you get the Kindle version, it's that much, paperback, that much. So I don't know, maybe you might ask if you're in a school, maybe your library can purchase a copy and then that way it can be borrowed, or you can try to go through it in whatever way. But I really, it's beautiful. I'm sure that you'll benefit a lot, especially in the not only for our own personal formation, but in the formation also of affectivity in young people. So with that, I conclude this talk.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Father Caio.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I posted in the chat box the link to claim the certificate. And I also flashed this on screen earlier. We will not have a session tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday, Monday being a holiday. So we'll give ourselves a bit of a break. We are going to resume on Tuesday with a session of Father Mark Sese on how to speak like Jesus, captivating students to do words that burn. Okay? No session tomorrow, on Sunday and Monday. Okay, meanwhile, I posted the link in the chat box. Please click on the link. And when you have been able to get the certificate in your inbox, kindly share it with us or let us know so that we are sure that the system is working. Okay, so looking at the form now, 13 so far have filled up the form. 14, 17. Okay, well, people are filling up. Meanwhile, we also invite you to turn on your video as we. Was anybody gotten the certificate? Okay, John Carlo from Southridge said he already got the certificate. So that means the system is working. In case you encounter any difficulties with a recording or with a certificate, just send an email to activities.catalyst@gmail.com. Okay, please let me first